This database lesson is about some new logical operators called between, in, and not. So the objective today is just simply to explain what these are, introduce you to them, and how to use them with a few examples. In previous lessons, we've seen some logical operators such as and, or, and like. So the operators we're going to be learning about in this lesson are just some different ones which give us some different functionality, which ultimately make our building of SQL statements a little bit more flexible. So let's start with an explanation of the first one, the between operator. So there are lots of times when, especially if we're working with, say, numerical data, where you actually want to check to see if a value that you wish to find or compare is inside of a certain range of numbers. So what the between operator allows us to do is actually state what that range is. So an example might be, show me all of the numbers between 10 and 20. The in operator is somewhat similar, but you can use that when you have a smaller list of known values that you want to search within. So I might say something like, give me all of the values that are in this list of values 1, 2, and 3. The not operator is what is known as the negation operator. And essentially, it's just used with other logical operators to reverse them. So we'll see a few examples of all three of those. So let's start off by talking about the between logical operator. So I stated earlier that between allows us to establish a range of values. Now when you're talking about a range, typically you want to know what the minimum value of the range and the maximum value of the range is. So that gives you the boundaries of the range that you wish to search. So we can use this operator as an operator to say between x and y. So you're always going to have the between operator paired with the word and the x would represent the minimum value, the y would represent the maximum value of the range that we want to establish. So let's jump into an example here. What I'm going to do is just write a quick query against the track table from the database. So we'll just see all of our data here. The fields we're going to be working with are the song name field, the track name field here, and we're going to start talking about this bytes field. The bytes field is actually the size in bytes of the file that represents, the track, so the MP4 file or whatever type it is. So let's narrow down our select list so that we're actually using just those two fields. It'll be our name field and our bytes field. Now I'm also going to alias the bytes field. This isn't necessary, but just to make things as clear as possible. So I'm going to call this my file size field. So when I do this, I can see now the names of each track and their file size. And just again, to make things even more clear, I'm also going to sort this by file size. I can put in either the name of the column itself, its native name, or the alias. Either one of those works. But you can see this is now sorted from in ascending order, which goes from lowest number to highest number. So the range that we're going to establish here to try and build into our query is we are going to look for all of the tracks that are between 3 and 4 megabytes in size. I'll remind you that a megabyte just means 1 million bytes. So this will be between any values that start with a 3 and have 7 digits and start with a 4 and have 7 digits. So we need to do that using my where clause. And the field, of course, that we're going to be talking about is my bytes field. Again, I could refer to this by the alias name if I chose, but this is less typing. So now where our operator comes in, if I put in the equal sign, I could put in one of these specific values, but that's not what I want. I want to actually say, show all of the tracks, no matter how many there are, that fall within this particular range. So instead of using the equals operator, I'm actually going to use the between operator. Now, when you use between, you're saying I want to use a range, so I need to establish the boundaries of the range. So what I'm going to do here is say between 3 million, and then we use a second operator for and then we put in our upper boundary. So that is between 3 million and 4 million. When I run this, you can see now I see all of the records that come between 3 million for file size, and at the other end of the spectrum, anything that is less than the 4 million. Now, some of you may be wondering, can I accomplish the same thing with the range by actually doing something like where it is greater than or equal to 3 million and where bytes is less than or equal to 4 million? And the answer to that question is absolutely, that is the exact same thing. But the between logical operator is, in my opinion, a little bit cleaner way of doing it. You have less criterion in your where clauses, so it just comes across as a little bit of a shortcut way of doing it. Another question that may have occurred to some of you is this, since we're establishing a range, is this actually an inclusive or an exclusive comparison against the range? Well, let's test that really quickly. If I look at my lowest value here, which fell within the range, let's actually use this as our lower end here. And I'm going to put this back to using the between and the and, so we can test it. And we'll see. When I run this, you can see that the lowest value in here was this value. So this is essentially the exact same as saying greater than or equal to rather than simply the greater than. So that means this is an inclusive search when you use between. So now we can talk about one of the other operators that I was referring to at the beginning of the video, the not operator. So essentially what the not does is it allows me to reverse the logic of what I'm doing. So a very simple example using the query that we already have here is I could say where bytes are not between, and that's exactly where this goes. And when I run this, just to see what happens, I'm going to get all of the things that fall outside of that range, whether that is before the range or after the range, but does not include any of the values that are inside of that range. So as you can see here, here's the breakpoint between the two. These are all the values that are less, and these are all the values that are more than the two ranges that I put, the two boundaries I put on my range. And the not operator will work in conjunction with pretty much any other logical operator. So the third one that we wanted to talk about today was the in operator, and what that allows us to do is specify an exact number of values that we want to compare against. So in order to do that, let's just pick a few values here. So the way that I would use it, instead of using my not between, I could say something like where bytes in, and then I would use a set of parentheses, and I can put as many values here as I want separated by commas. So let's take a couple of specific values separated by commas, and we'll just put them into our criteria, and then a comma at the end, and I'll pick, say, this one. When I run this query now, I get only those three values. Now, if I found something that was not in the one of the specific values as my list, I would then lose the one that matched that. So it will just always find anything that is in this list. You can put quite a few in this list, but typically it will be, say, if you had a relatively small number of values that you knew what they were and you were looking for exact matches. I can also do something like use the not operator again here, and this would give me anything that is not in this list of values. In other words, everything else besides those three. I'm not going to go down and find them, but I'll tell you right now that these three values are not in our actual list. That's how the not operator works. It reverses the logical operations of the other logical operators that you're using. Another very common usage of the not operator is when it's used with the like. So if you're doing a fuzzy search, let's just say using our name field, where find me all of the records that begin with the letter A, and I'll order this by name. If I run this, you can see here are all of the songs that begin with the letter A and have any number of characters after them, I could very quickly reverse this to say, give me all of the values that do not start with A. So if I scroll down here, this is sorted. You can see I go from numbers directly to B. So there's no A records. So here's the pause task for this lesson. Welcome back. So our task was to find any invoices from South American countries that fall in the range of $5 to $10. I wrote this particular query up here just as a supporting query, just to look up the values so I could see it. If I go in here, you'll notice this is using the distinct keyword to give me the distinct countries from the invoice table, and I also sorted it by country just to make it easier for me to find. And then since there's only 24, I just said I'm going to eyeball this, and I found Argentina, Brazil, and Chile. Everything else was not from South America, but that gave me the list of the 3 countries I had. So once I determined I had 3 countries, I say, oh, look, a small list of defined values that I know. Hey, that's a great place to use in my where clause the in operator. So I would say where billing country is in, and then I would put in my list of values, which I already have on my clipboard. So I'm going to copy and paste that. When I run this particular one, this will show me all of the Brazilian, Argentinian, and Chilean records. That gives me the first part, and then the second part was to put in anything that fell in the range of $5 to $10. So I need a second criterion, so I can put it in here using the AND, since I want my result set to be filled with records that meet both criteria. And what I can use here is, since I have a range that I want to find between 5 and 10, I don't know how many values are in there or what the values are, so this is a great candidate for using the between operator. So where my total field, which is what contains the numeric dollar data, I could say that where that is between 5 and 10. When I run this in its entirety, I look through in here, I see now only records from those 3 countries. This all fall between 5 and 10, so everything seems fine, although I would say this makes it a little bit hard to read. I would probably sort this, so using my order by clause to just say something along the lines of order by, probably in this case I would probably put it as total, and I'm going to put it descending so that the highest dollar amount is at the top of the query. So we run this, I see my countries, I see my totals, they fall within the range, so everything seems to be good. So I hope you learned something good about some of the other logical operators, such as between, in, and not. They're very useful, and you can use them with all kinds of other operators just to make your queries that much more powerful and flexible.